Good afternoon, everyone. It is about 12:15 p.m. Monday, April 20th, 2015, and welcome to the 7th episode of the High School Coaches Corner. Zack here again to put coaches on the hot seat. On today's show, we have an 8-year volleyball coach at Eagle Rock High School who has led his boys and girls team to four city championships and is looking to bring his current boys team their third championship in a row, a three-peat. I am joined today by Coach Tim Bergeron. Tim, thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for having me.
First off, how are you?
Oh, very good. Yeah, just in the middle of the season, preparing for the playoffs, which will be upcoming soon.
How's the season going so far?
Up and down. We have a younger team this year, a little inexperienced, but as long as we're getting better every single time we play and we're peaking at the right time in the playoffs, it should be a good run.
Now, Eagle Rock has had some major success in recent years, with your boys' volleyball team. Do you think this team you have currently has a shot, of building that dynasty with a three-peat, and what stands in your way?
Well, I think going into every season, I look at it as an individual year. We've won 2 in a row, but that group that we won with, they all graduated. So we're starting with a new group. Most of them were JV players last year. As of right now, we have 2 or 3 seniors on our team. So, we're just trying to get better and be more experienced. The first varsity game, I told a lot of the players, I'm like, hey, well, none of you guys have actually played in a varsity game before, and the speed's a little bit different. And again, it's just a process, one day at a time.
Is it hard to find, that leadership, with all your seniors have left? Has anybody really stepped up and taken that leadership role that you wanted to?
Oh, yeah. Dylan Martin, who is a returning player from that group, he was one of the underclassmen last year. He's really taken a leadership role in terms of, just kind of giving the guys an idea of what it takes to win a championship because he was on that team. And then also in the offseason, he gathered a lot of funds together and motivation to get the guys to play a lot. We formed our own club team.
Oh, wow.
For Eagle Rock High School. And he was a major part in raising the money and kind of subsidizing through fundraisers the process so we could get everybody involved in that.
Now, that's got to be a whole different thing, for you to do with, a club team is very different than, regular season matchups in boys volleyball. It hasn't been hard to raise money for a club team and to get it going?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest challenges at Eagle Rock has been the finances. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of kids that are interested, like volleyball nerds, and that's one of the long-term goals of the program was to build a lifelong passion for volleyball. The problem is to compete with some of the top programs, a lot of those programs have multiple players that are playing club, and again, it's just a numbers game. I think a numbers game in terms of how many hours you put in based upon your talent, and by forming a club team, I think it puts us in a better competitive advantage against some of those teams.
Now, is it? I guess it's hard to compare Eagle Rock against a team like a Southern Section team, because it does come down to a lot of the socioeconomic backgrounds of players. Is it? And volleyball is one of those sports that if you have money, you can play, multiple club teams and stuff like that. Is it hard? I guess to preach to your kids that you can get there without joining the club team, and you can do it without having all this money like people in the Southern Section?
Well, one of the concepts we preach a lot is faith in the system and the Eagle Rock volleyball system, and I think based on previous seasons, a lot of them come in knowing, well, hey, we've been good, and it's just a process of putting the time in. And we have multiple shirts in the program, and one of them is 10,000 hours, and that's from the Outliers book that's actually a requirement for a lot of them to read at Eagle Rock. But I think they really believe, based upon the past with the girls and the boys, because I coach the girls too, if they do put the time in, it doesn't matter whether it's happening in Anaheim at a club tournament or in a scrimmage versus another city section team. As long as you're playing a lot of volleyball and you're getting better and it's good time, you can compete with anybody.
Mm-hmm. It really speaks to Eagle Rock because I know, having played at Taft, that Eagle Rock, is always there at every tournament that we are at, and they're always ready, for every practice, for every scrimmage. Eagle Rock is a team that's playing some of the most volleyball of any team in the city section.
Yeah, that's one of the goals that I had when I came in, I took over was, well, I watched some of the top programs. Taft is one of the ones I watched, and I noticed through my observation, because I didn't really have much experience coaching in the city section or coaching in general. When I took over at Eagle Rock, I just kind of started, and I noticed that they were playing a lot. If there was ever a tournament or an opportunity for them to play, they were there. So that's one of the things I took was let's play as much volleyball as possible, because it's about inexperience or lack of experience, and then gaining that experience for you to be good. And if you play a lot, you put yourself in situations where your volleyball IQ can get to a high level. So when you're in those competitive games, you know what to do, not just doing it. It's knowing what to do. That's a big part of it.
Right, and that's got to help. I mean, do a majority of your players, only start playing volleyball as soon as they enter high school?
Oh, absolutely. I think for the boys program, we have never had a player come in with any volleyball experience.
Oh, well, never.
Never. I think, they all have started in ninth grade. We did have 1 year a player transfer in as a junior that had some volleyball experience, I think, before he was in ninth grade. But for the most part, it's all they either start in ninth grade or they start in 10th grade. And it just depends. Sometimes it's hard finding volleyball players because they're not volleyball players yet. They start as basketball players, or, I was talking to one of my players on Friday. We were just talking about the program, and I asked him, hey, why did you try out for volleyball? And it's always an interesting response. It's not because, I like volleyball or I know anything about volleyball. It's, my friend was on the team, or I was just feeling like I need to do something that day. And so they start from scratch, and they, by the end of it, really enjoy it and build a passion for it. And that passion drives the hard work. And eventually, one of the guarantees I give them is we will compete for a championship, hopefully every single year. Not win it every single year, but be in very competitive situations. And that's what being an athlete's all about.
Definitely. And that definitely speaks to you as a coach, to build up these kids, from the start. It's not easy to build a team from kids, have not played the sport until they enter high school. So it must be very rewarding to see these kids that start off and they don't know how to pass a ball, and then by the end of the senior year, they're making the biggest kill at the end of the game. So that's got to be a great feeling.
Oh, absolutely. I think we take pride in Eagle Rock in developing players, skill, and that's going to happen. I mean, the system is pretty developed and it can always get better. But the other development we really focus on is the character development and the development of people, how you deal with adversity. I mean, sports is a very highly emotional experience, which is good because in high school, in your normal classrooms, you're not going to get that same type of emotion. But, how you deal with those situations, how you grow, how you communicate with other people. I think there's so many things that translate from the sports atmosphere to what you need to do to be successful in life. So we kind of guide them and mentor them through that experience and that process. And the end result is we have good volleyball players and we have good people.
That's good. I mean, it's always, amazing to see, as a coach, you're more than just someone that calls up plays and, and decides rotations. You're a teacher as well. And, to see kids and have them come back to you at the end of their volleyball careers has also got to be a great feeling too, to have that. I guess I preach this probably every episode, but sports is really all about family. And if you have a really big family aspect, within your team, that that's got to be just great, feeling.
Oh, absolutely. It's about building a culture of success, but also, like you said, family. I mean, some of the most memorable moments that I have as a coach aren't the wins or the losses. It's how we talk to each other and negotiate or spend time with each other in dealing with those losses. For example, when we lost in 2010, the next day, which was Sunday, we kind of had a little open gym, and all of our players come in, and there's a lot of hugs and there's just a lot of compassion for each other. And I think that's really important more than anything.
Definitely. Now, I want to get more on the success of your guys' team so far this year. You guys are fresh off, a week ago. You guys won a very key tournament against a very tough Taft team. Now, two questions. Is it hard to prepare guys for a tournament rather than just a regular match because of all the games and all the all the sets you play in a tournament? And what clicked for you in your championship match against Taft?
Okay. Well, with the tournament, one phrase I use a lot is you have to refill the cup because there's a lot of matches and you can't have any kind of hangover or previous point or previous match hangover because as soon as you're done playing, there's going to be another one. And at that particular tournament, in order to win the tournament, you had to play 6 matches. And it so happened that we got into a pretty good rhythm in terms of being consistent throughout the day. And the other thing that's great about a tournament is the matches usually get progressively more difficult as the day goes. So you can build some sort of a rhythm going forward. In the playoffs, I told them, hey, every match is going to be more difficult going forward.
Right. Now, what clicked for you against Taft? This is a very tough Taft team. They came off a few very good wins versus Chatsworth and Granada Hills. It was definitely probably the toughest team you faced all day that day. What clicked for you guys?
Well, I feel that at the top of the division, Taft's one of the teams that we're going to have to compete against in the playoffs. So we saw them in Vegas. We didn't play them, but I've been keeping somewhat an eye on them. And also I'm familiar with their system. And being that, not that we totally scouted them beforehand, it's just we kind of know somewhat of what they were doing at that time, which is going to be different at the end of the year. And the same thing, we're going to be a different team at the end of the year. And I felt like it was easier for us to make some adjustments against that team because we had seen what they had done. And they had just played an emotional match against Granada. And I was able to, not being there, understand what they did in order to win that match. And I felt like that helped. And I think the motivation and the energy was a very big thing too in that match. Is the guys know that that's one of the teams, if not the team that we might have to play in the playoffs, whether it's in the semifinals and the finals. And from a motivational standpoint and energy standpoint, I think they're going to play with more intensity because they know that there's an elevated meaning behind that match. Not that we don't play with energy in every single match, but I felt like it was a little higher in that game.
Now, I, for one, probably speak for many that follow City Section Volleyball, is I can't wait to see that rematch that's probably going to be happening in the city finals.
Yeah, well, we got to take it one match at a time. It would be nice if we played them sometime in the playoffs. If it happens in the championship, it happens in the championship. A lot's to be determined with seeding and matchups and who's going to play who. And, it could be that we end up playing them in the semifinals. It could be at Taft. It could be at Eagle Rock. It could be in the championship game. But by no means is Taft or us as a team going to underestimate the other teams there in the mix. I believe, Sylmar is very good. I believe Chatsworth is very good. And I always say there's a team that comes out of nowhere, whether it's in the playoffs or halfway through the season when teams start playing more volleyball, that haven't played as much in the off season. There's a team that always surprises, and there may be a 5th team that's in the mix that's going to give one of those 4 that are perceived as being very strong right now some difficulty in a 5-set match in the playoffs.
Right, and the playoffs is definitely every match, no matter who you're facing is going to be tough. So, I do wish that you guys would play Taft because I would love to see that matchup. You got to get through the other teams first before that happens.
Absolutely.
Now, I want to talk about, your last year's team for a second. That team, they won a city championship. You guys were stacked. You had the best player, you had the player of the year in Stewart Ramirez, who is probably one of the best players to ever come out of Eagle Rock. You had this libero, Earl, who, I've seen him play a few times. He's really good at what he does. And you have a stud outside hitter in Jordan Banez. But it seems like you guys haven't missed a beat. Was it hard to rebuild this year, considering you lost so many great players last year?
Yeah, one of the long-term goals I had with the program was, I wanted to be good every single year. And that's not an easy thing to do because depending upon what talent comes in the door, it's going to be difficult to be at the top because it's a mixture of putting time in and also having talented players. In last 2 years, the reason why, or part of the reason why we won is the system, but also those players. So I'm very thankful for having those players come through the program. But our foundation, our pipeline has been good. Our JV team was very good last year, and we have a group of what I would call volleyball nerds with this group right now. And while we don't have a lot of seniors, we do have a lot of juniors that were on that JV team last year, and they're they're very motivated, they're very hungry, and we put together a club team without even me putting pressure to do that. Like, they kept asking me, hey coach, can we do this? We want to go down to Anaheim, we want to play some of these teams, we want to compete, we want to get better. And I think that's really the secret, is the passion of trying to be good every single year. If you have passion, people are going to want to play a lot, and we've played a lot, and now we're in somewhat of a contention to do it. And we're just focusing on our ball control, pretty good setting and pretty good passing. So hopefully we'll be in contention to compete, and it should be a very good game.
Now, who are your key players, for the boys team this season? Who has been impressive early in the season?
I feel like, our outside hitter, Justin Rodriguez, has had a great year so far. Last year he was a little bit disappointed because, we wanted him, I wanted him, he wanted himself to be our opposite last year, which would have, I believe, helped us be even a stronger team in adding balance to our offense. But unfortunately, based upon his experience, he wasn't able to get that spot. And he was his motivation dropped a little bit last year. But going forward in the off season, starting in the summer and then in September, he's really put his mind and soul into volleyball, and he's improved a lot as a player. I think he takes pride now in wanting to be a good player. His offense, his passing, he'll text me after a match on his own and say, hey coach, what can I do to get better? Where am I missing something? And I think that's important. Once you start taking pride in your approach, and it's intrinsic, instead of it being, hey, well, your coach tells you should do this and you should do A, B, C, D. If you have players asking you questions, they're more likely to absorb the knowledge that you give them because they're the source. They're the ones that are asking for the information.
And that's got to feel good to have players, that are motivated like that. That will text you after games. They will always, they won't hesitate to ask you a question. That's got to have players that's got to be, great to have players that are so passionate.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the goal. That's what you're aiming for. I mean, it's not always perfect. And I think when you have a high percentage of players that are like that, and it is a culture, right? I feel like the more players you have, it's a domino effect of, they're going to do that and other players are going to do that. And if you can build that and you have that energy and you have that fervor and everybody really, really, really wants to win and buys into the system, you're going to be good.
Right. Now, you can catch this Earl team play actually a very tough match in their next home game this Wednesday against Carson at 5:30 at Eagle Rock. Coach, it's got to be fun to get you guys up for a match against a powerhouse team like Carson.
Oh, yeah. I mean, our schedule the last couple of years for boys volleyball has been great. I managed to, over the years, try to improve our non-league schedule. And it's tough because in the Northern League, as opposed to like the West Valley League, and the West Valley League has 2 teams that we may play in the playoffs. The Northern League's not as tough. So our 10 matches, depending upon the year, sometimes Marshall will have a pretty good team. But the last couple years, it's been 10 matches where we need to stay motivated. And we try to be consistent. We set little individual goals in those games to try to reach them and stay ready. But sometimes we'll practice after our league games and get ready for the Carsons or the Palisades or the Granada Hills or the Chatsworth. And those are the 4 teams that are in our non-league schedule, which are all kind of mixed in the middle of our league season. So, we played Granada at the beginning. We played Palisades last Wednesday, which we had 3 games in 1 week. Same thing this week. We're going to have 3 games or 3 matches in 1 week, and in the middle is going to be that Carson. So, we want to challenge ourselves against, the top teams in the city, whether it's Division II or Division I. And the more we put ourselves in situations where we're going to have to make adjustments and we're going to be forced outside our comfort zone and there's going to be adversity, it's just preparation for the end of the season. It's preparation for the playoffs, for when we play the other teams that we're going to have to compete and win against in the playoffs.
Now, it just so happens to be that your league isn't as tough, competitively as other leagues in the Valley or in the city section. Is it hard to get your guys up, when you're playing teams like Palisades, Carson, and Granada, for matches in your league that aren't as tough? And, does your team tend to sort of take it easy during those games, or is it hard to keep them motivated?
It's a challenge. I believe it's a challenge, but this entire experience is about challenges. I think that's why I enjoy coaching, is the challenge. If it was easy, it wouldn't be any fun. But it's difficult sometimes, and that's why we'll practice after those league games. But our tournament schedule is very difficult. And going into the season, we map it out and we talk about it. All right, these are going to be the big games. We want to make sure we're ready for this. And those are the teams that we're preparing for is, how do we beat a Carson or a Palisades or a Granada or teams that run advanced volleyball systems that have a lot of club players. So our mindset isn't necessarily the league games. I do believe every single time you touch a volleyball, you get better, and sometimes it's not even about what's going on the other side of the net. It's about what's going on your side of the net. So I think in our league games, we focus on our side of the net, and in the competitive games, we'll shift our focus to the other side of the net and try to gear and strategize and stop what they're going to try to do against us and then pick on their weaknesses.
Cool. Now, Tim, I want to get into a little about your history with volleyball. How did you start coaching at Eagle Rock, and what led you to become a coach?
Well, it's a funny story. I remember I was doing some pole working at when I was in college, and I was talking to someone, and I always had aspirations of wanting to be a teacher, but early on I felt like there wasn't enough money in it. But then when I graduated, I came back and I was a little lost. I majored in political science, and I was going to go to grad school. I didn't go to grad school. And my former coach at Eagle Rock, he asked me, hey, you want to come down to Eagle Rock and get the stipend and just practice with the team, not really coach a team. And I felt like, how can I turn down $1,500 if all I'm going to do is just, get some exercise and play some volleyball? So I did that, and one thing led to another, and my former coach, his wife got a nice job in Chicago, so the program was open. I really didn't have much coaching experience. I did coach JV girls for a season and JV boys for a season on my own, which was a different and interesting experience because I never really had experience of trying to lead a team and standing up in front of people and talking to them and all that stuff. So he left, and I just kind of jumped into it. And every year, tried to get better, tried to befriend a lot of the top coaches in the city, found as many mentors as I could, read a couple books that I felt like really changed my perspective on the type of coach that I wanted to be and the system I wanted to run. And eventually, over the years, formulated a system that I feel like is pretty effective. And, I've always felt like I'm a pretty natural motivator, but I think formulating the system of what it takes to be a good volleyball player was a little more difficult. But, it's a process, and every year we got better, and this is where we are right now.
Cool. Now, we're winding down here. Got a couple more questions. You mentioned that you started coaching at Eagle Rock a few years ago. Who can you credit most for your coaching abilities now? Who do you I guess credit most as your role model?
In terms of a motivational standpoint, I so randomly met someone at Eagle Rock who was just playing there on a Thursday night. He used to coach. He's about 60 years old, and I was playing pickup basketball with them, and he asked me a couple times on Thursdays, hey, how's your team doing? And, he referred me to a couple books, and I really refer to him as my number one mentor in terms of philosophy. I'll go to him a lot. I feel like Arman Mercado at Taft, when I befriended him, I asked him a lot of questions. I watched Alan Hunt at Venice and Bob Thompson for girls volleyball at Silmar. And just through observation and also through talking to them and communicating with them, they helped formulate at least my coaching philosophy, which is different than theirs. But at the same time, I feel like everybody, if you're going to be good, you have to continue to learn and continue to grow. So, I try to talk as much volleyball with anybody and watch as much volleyball as anybody. And I feel like a mentor doesn't need to be a physical person. I read John Wooden's book, Wooden on Leadership, and I felt like that really changed my coaching philosophy too.
Cool. Now, again, we're winding down here. Just got one last question here. You've been a great guest. Do you see yourself coaching at Eagle Rock for a long time and continuing that dynasty that you've built in the last few years?
I feel like I do. I always tell people I bleed green. I'm an Eagle Rock alumni, and the system that we run today is a little different than the system that we ran when I was at Eagle Rock High School. But, I feel bonded to that community because a huge part of who I am today was growing up in Eagle Rock, and it's very diverse, and I like the community a lot, so I'd like to stay there long term. Yes.
Cool. Now it's got to speak volumes to your players that that you're willing there to stay there for a while and continuing that dynasty. Once again, it's been great to have you on the show. You can catch Eagle Rock again take on Carson this Wednesday at Eagle Rock at 5:30. Coach Tim Bergeron, it's been great to have you. You can catch us next week on the High School Coaches Corner Mondays at 12:35. This has been Zack for KPCRadio.com.